want to welcome everyone to this PIM SmartCafe event, the printing industry's employment crisis and what printers are doing about it. This is a PIM event, but we are being supported by partners from all over the country, from outside of printing industry Midwest. I'm Steve Bonoff with PIM, but we're represented here by associations in the America's Printing Association Network, APAN. And so we've got people from all over the country who are grappling with this same issue. There is not a localized issue as it relates to our workforce development and our employment needs. This is a nationwide problem, and so we're all in this together, and we're going to be talking about some terrific facts and figures today about enlightening us on some of the best practices and some of the highlighting of some of the needs that we have and as we grapple with these issues. And then towards the end, I'm going to be talking about a few solutions that I think that we can begin to bring to market. But before we get underway, I want to thank our partners because without partners like Jacob Berenbrook from Gravy, it makes our job that much more difficult. So we're here to serve the industry, and it's partners like Gravy that help us do that. Gravy has been a good partner of Printing Industry Midwest. They're our healthcare insurance partner, providing insurance to a number of our members, and they're expanding across the nation. And so I give Jacob just a moment here to share a little bit about why he's on board here today and a little bit about his company. Jacob, welcome.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks everybody for letting me join your call. I promise Steve didn't trick you into an hour-long health insurance conversation, so I'll be very brief. We've been able to really build a great partnership with PIM and the members of PIM, and really our goal is here at Gravy is to improve the way people purchase and access healthcare. And as we continue to look at traditional health benefits as a whole, costs continue to rise. That's a big issue for everybody. We're looking for retention and recruitment really across all industries. And what Gravy wanted to do was really find a way to provide value across the board to an entire employee population in a little bit better way. So we wanted to understand what were some of the main core issues that employees were having with their health insurance. A couple of things really resonated. One, of course, cost. Two, really being the lack of benefit employees receive from their health benefits, right? So you pay your premium each and every month, and then you're having to pay for every other experience that you have with your health insurance. So think of the co-pays that you're having to pay, the labs and imaging costs that there might be with those common healthcare services. You're always having this nickel and dimed experience. And so what Gravy's done is we've created a health plan called Comfort that removes all of the co-pays for those common healthcare services. So providing a lot more value across the board to an entire population, and not just that 10% that's always utilizing the plan. So we bring a unique plan design. We offer a support system that's second to none. We have a 93% retention rate for groups that have transitioned to Gravy. We're showing really nice savings across the board, on average 16% overall premium savings when moving to Gravy. So we really wanted to take approach of let's take care of the consumers. We really figured out that once the employees were actually taken care of and have a health benefit plan that provides them more value, it's less confusing, they're saving money, everything works itself out from there. And so Gravy would love an opportunity to explore your health benefits with you and your employees as well. If you have any questions or would like to explore some of those options, please reach out to anybody on the PIM team that could help facilitate those conversations. So, Steve, again, thanks for having me, and I appreciate everybody listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate it. Before we get underway, just a couple of housekeeping. On a webinar like this, you have what's an option that we call a Q&A. So you might always normally be in the chat function when you're communicating, but on a webinar, you have the ability to actually ask a question with a Q&A. You'll find that on the bottom left-hand of your screen. Post your question. The moderator, Patrick Henry, will be evaluating that along with our team of panelists, and we'll make sure we get to that question throughout the day. And Jacob, you've already had a question, so we'll make sure that you have the opportunity to answer that as well. And so you can raise your hand. You are automatically muted. If you'd like to be unmuted, please raise your hand and we can make that happen. Because we do want questions throughout, but I'll let Patrick address that. I'm going to introduce our moderator, Patrick Henry. He's been a noted journalist in our industry since 1984. I noticed that he retired last year. He seems to have a hard time actually staying away, because I know he loves our industry and we appreciate his continued support. Patrick, I'll let you take away and introduce your panel, and I'll see you towards the end of the presentation today.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve. And it's a pleasure to be here today. And it is a pleasure to introduce our speakers. Three of them are professors of management at Jones College of Business at Middle Tennessee State University, where they published the printing industry performance and insight studies for the 15 regional trade associations that are now represented by the America's Printing Association Network, or as Steve said, APAN. Dr. Dan Morrell is the program director of the MS in Management and MS in Supply Chain Management programs at MTSU, where he teaches classes in decision-making and applied research. Dr. Tim Moake specializes in human resource management, talent acquisition and management, organizational behavior, and principles of management. Now, Dr. Ralph Williams came to academia after a distinguished print industry career in which he served as president of 3 commercial printing companies and held major ownership stakes in 2 of them. His areas of expertise are small business management, family business management, mission and goals, and performance management. And finally, we're going to be hearing more from Steve, who will brief us on the importance of developing a workforce plan. Now, I think all of our speakers will agree that it's no exaggeration to call the printing industry's present employment situation a crisis. In many years of writing about the industry, I have never heard printers express more concern about recruitment and retention than I am hearing from them now. But the positive news is that there are ways out of this crisis, and that's going to be the focus of our program today. But before I turn it over to the experts, I want to repeat Steve's call for some good questions from you, our audience. Please do use the Q&A dialogue at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will get to as many of your questions as we can. Well, Dan, let's please begin with you. What are the dimensions of this crisis and what are its main causes?
Okay, thanks, Pat. First, we're going to look at the snapshot of the overall labor market. One factor is labor force participation rate. As you can see, it was growing steadily until about 2000, and then it started dropping off until 2020. This is pandemic, and then it dropped off precipitously. This is the Great Resignation. So, you might be wondering, how can we have such a low labor force participation rate, but also have such a low unemployment rate? Our unemployment rate is currently around 3.5%. And so what happened is around 2000, some of the baby boomers started aging out and retiring out of the market. And then, of course, in 2020, it was even more. So where it goes from here is we're going to look at that and discuss who's coming into the labor market as the baby boomers are exiting. Okay, so basically there's 4 main generations that are in the labor market right now, maybe 5. You have the greatest generation. They're mostly retired. Those are people born from 1916 to 1928. Some of them are still in Congress, I think. But then silent generation, 1929 to 1946. Baby boomers. That's a great big part of the labor market. Those people are born 1947 to 1965. Gen X, 1966 to 1981. Millennials are 1982 to 1999. And then Gen Z is 2000 to 2020. And so these are your total populations here. You could see baby boomers are at 68.7 million. Gen X is a smaller generation, 65 million. Millennials is much larger, 82 million. And then Gen Z are 86 million. So as baby boomers are exiting the market, the millennials and the Gen Z are entering the market. So this is a report from the Manufacturing Institute, and they're talking about how this affects manufacturing firms. As far as the aging workforce, they're seeing a greater exit in manufacturing areas than they are in other parts of the overall labor force. So they did a survey, about 97% were aware of the issue of aging and its effect on labor force, and 78% were very or somewhat concerned. 97% expressed at least some concern about brain drain. Now, brain drain is your loss of tacit knowledge. So, you know, as you get more tenure in your firm or just in the industry, you know implicitly how to handle certain problems as they arise. If you're in customer service, you know how to handle that certain problem customer. If you're in the press end of it, the production end of it, you know what to do when there's XYZ problems that happen with that same machine over a period of time. And so as these employees that have longer tenure, as they leave your organization, you need to find where you're going to replace those from. So when we're looking at it as far as the baby boomers go, actually more exited than, see, it was pretty steady, about 2 million per year, and then 1.5 in 2019. Then it jumped up to 3 million in 2020. Again, this is a component of the pandemic. Because people were concerned with catching COVID-19, they went into retirement a little bit earlier than they necessarily would have. Anybody who was thinking about retiring in the next 2 to 3 years, they were able to push up their clock a little bit. And as those baby boomers exit, you see the millennials are coming up, and then this is a little bit older slide. Here's a little bit better one. As the baby boomers, see, this is a snapshot for 2025. So baby boomers are exiting. Gen X is kind of slowing down a little bit. They'll be closing on 59 by that time. And millennials are going to be the largest part of the workforce by 2025. Followed by, you know, Gen Z is just going to be starting to enter it because they're going to be 20, 24 years old. So what we've found out is in our research on generational differences as it concerns employees in the workforce, there's a different motivational factor with millennials than there are for baby boomers and Gen X. You know, look around your current organization. Do you have more of an older population, or do you have are you able to attract those younger employees? if you're able to attract those younger employees, then there would probably be some other people in the industry that would like to know how you go about attracting those younger employees. Okay, now I'm going to pass it back over to Tim.
Thanks, Dan. So Dan has kind of given us a nice macro picture of what's happening in the overall economy as far as with workers and what's going on there. But in our October 2021 survey we conducted with the printing industry firms, a couple things that popped out to us that we want to highlight today in our little webinars we're going through is that roughly 14% of most organizations had approximately 14% turnover. And so turnover over the past year prior to 2021 at 14%, we're looking at double digits. But what's important is as we break that turnover down and we looked at it, 10.5% of that turnover was voluntary turnover, meaning it was employees who left for other opportunities, which kind of makes sense in terms of the Great Resignation and everything we've been hearing about the Great Resignation. Why employees were leaving their current workforce and they were looking for better opportunities, typically better paying jobs, things of that nature. And the other part of that 14% turnover was 3.5%, which were non-voluntary turnover, which were people who were fired or laid off. And so you have this high turnover, about 14%, that's happening across printing industry firms. But then what's the other side of that coin is that in part of our survey, we saw that about 36% of those open positions remained open for more than a year. So you start having this dynamic where if you have turnover that's going up, but then you can't replace those people and you can't replace them for more than a year, all of a sudden you start feeling pain points. And so Dan, if you can move us forward. And so that then came out in some of the quotes we heard from the participants. And so here's some of the ones we wanted to highlight. You look at the top, it says, recruiting and hiring is difficult. There's few candidates. And then the next couple, finding skilled employees, finding entry-level employees. These are all difficult things. Wages are going up. So that's kind of part of what's happening in the overall economy, where individuals are leaving. We're having a hard time now replacing them. And the ones we are replacing, we can't pay them the same we were paying a year ago because wages are going up. And so again, you have this dynamic happening and you start to see people expressing these pain points that are coming out. And so what has to happen is to keep up with production, we still have to fulfill those orders. And so if you look at that second to last point, it says we're working more overtime. Because why? We still have to produce at the same levels. And so all of a sudden you start seeing effects happening in the organization. The other thing I wanted to point out is if you look at that bottom one, what's interesting, and this goes back to Dan's comments from earlier, is that 18% of printing industry employees are over the age of 60. In other words, not only do we have what's happening in the general economy where it's hard to find people because people are exiting the workforce, looking for new jobs, we can't find new people, but there's also a cliff coming in the printing industry for a lot of organizations. And that cliff is about 18% of the workforce is going to eventually move on. And so you have these issues that are happening. And so we start overworking our employees. And so one of the things we wanted to ask in the Q&A is, are you seeing any changes or is this still happening today in your organization? Are you still feeling those pain points where we can't find new workers? We can't basically pay what's going on out there. We're having to overwork our employees. And so if you wouldn't mind just jumping on the Q&A and sharing some of your thoughts. Are you still seeing this or are things kind of lightening up, getting better? And so while you're doing that, then it makes sense. If you look at this, the other thing that will happen is, okay, we don't have the workers and they're not motivated because why? We're starting to burn them out. Or you have this issue where we can't bring in workers, those jobs remain open, production has to stay the same. So then what happens? We start overworking our current workforce. And then that came out also in the survey. If you look at what leaders shared about employee motivation, look at that first one. It says, most of them seem to have lost their will to work. Why? Because the current workers were demanding and asking a lot from them. We're saying, hey, we understand that people are leaving, but we can't find anyone to replace them, so we need you to do more. And then it gets to the point of people are like, well, it's difficult to find anyone willing to work, work ethic is down, but it's all because you have this whole transition that's happening. Whereas we don't have enough workers, our current workers are then getting overworked. And when they're overworked and all of a sudden they don't see any benefits coming to them, their motivation begins to drop. And so what that then leads us to is there are organizations out there, though, that are still being successful. So one of the other questions we want to ask you is, are there any organizations out there that are finding success in how they motivate their employees? Even if, say, for example, you aren't being able to replace your current employees, how are you, or those employees that have left, how are you keeping your current employees motivated? And so if we go over to the chat or the Q&A, we still see, for example, Kelly said there's still a big shortage of workers. Mackenzie said we're still seeing this. It's not lightened up. We're still having difficulties hiring. And then Jay asked, is that 18% of over 60-year employees? We'll have Ralph get to that question here shortly, because that's basically from the printing industry. So that's not from manufacturing. So I'm not sure if that's broken up into cells or if that's just purely those working on the manufacturing side of the printing industry. But as we're looking at this again, if you have ways that you're motivating your employees, we'd like you to share those in the Q&A so that you can share those with everyone else around here.
To answer that question, that is the big picture. It's not divided into production or sales admin.
Okay, Ralph, do you want to share a little bit about what's happening as far as the positive recruiting that's going on?
Sir?
Did you want to share a little bit about this next slide about the effectiveness of recruiting?
Yes, we ask on all these elements on a 1 to 5 scale, what was effective recruiting methods. It's interesting that employee referral was at the top, and we experienced that where we would ask the employee, we have this position open, do you know of someone? And there's a little bit of, if somebody recommends a friend or somebody that he or she knows, they're taking a risk. They're going to stand up for that person. So we found that to be very, very workable. Of course, a lot of people using job search websites and social media. The temporary employment agencies, I wonder if it's effective now, given the labor shortage that we're having, workforce shortage. However, this worked tremendously for us. We connected with a temporary agency. We would say, we want a temporary employee, but we want someone who will progress to a full-time position. And a great story, we brought in a man named John, and he came in as a temporary employee and worked hard, impressed us, progressed from what he was doing in the hands-on in the bindery to the press room as a helper. And then a year or two later became a pressman, making good money. And it just warms my heart to think about how that progressed. The company website, that's resonated with me recently, and looking at some company websites, if someone is interested in your company, they will probably come to your website and look at it. But doing more than listing the job openings you have is important. For instance, you might state the job openings, then you might share things where that openings in that tab related to your company values and your company employee, your human resource approaches, and that sort of thing. Another thing that I've seen and that I like is in that tab where they're talking about openings, they may have employees talk about why it is, interview them on why it is a good thing to work for your company, and let them share that. I think that's a big plus. And I've seen that in a few printing companies. The two at the bottom, partnering with colleges and partnering with high schools. Dan and Tim, and Dan and Tim are HR. I'm more strategy. Dan and Tim and I so appreciate their work with me on this. But my impression from what research I've seen is that partnering with colleges and partnering with high schools is a very effective way to draw in people. However, it appears we're not doing that much in our industry among association members. And I understand that it takes a lot of time and a lot of resources, and it takes time, but it also, it takes probably a couple of years to build those kind of relationships. So I see maybe why that hasn't been approached or applied by many companies, but it's something to apply. The also thing to think about is that, most of us are small companies with 50 employees or less. So a 50 employee company may not have a human resources person. That becomes something else on the owner president's plate. And so that's another thing to battle with. Dan or Tim, do you have comments on what I said or things to add there?
The only thing I would add to this is that all of this is typical of the same things that we have been doing for many, many years. But as the generations shift and change and you're trying to recruit younger workers, don't overlook social media from the standpoint of it sends a signal to younger workers that you are involved in innovation, that you're not just in a stale old company. You might not necessarily find it to be super effective, but if you have a social media presence out there where you're putting things out there, that does send a signal to younger workers that, hey, this isn't a dead old company. This is a young company who's looking at innovation, looking at things to change. And that then signals to them that, hey, maybe there's something there that I can look at. That'd be the only thing I really have to add to what you said, Ralph.
Also, I'm sorry. Also,
go ahead, Dan.
Be careful. You're just not recycling the same old job descriptions that you've had before. Sometimes it's, you might have a job posting that you just save in a Word document. You might pull it up and paste it easy. But as Tim pointed out the other day, there was a company that was having problems. I think it was a window manufacturer, right? Window manufacturer was having problems finding people, and on the job posting, it said you had to have 5 years experience building windows. Well, that, how much of your workforce does that eliminate out of your recruitment pool? So how much of your requirements are really required and how much are teachable things? So you might go through and look at that. And also, as Tim was saying, make sure you have, you're projecting the right image on social media. If you're a larger organization, you're probably going to have employment reviews on glassdoor.com. So go to glassdoor.com and look up and see what your past employees are saying about your organization, because that's going to keep potential applicants, especially your Gen Y, Gen Z, they're 100% going to look at that, and they're going to look at your Google reviews too. So make sure that you don't have bad information on there or inaccurate information. Go ahead.
Every industry is going through this now, and thinking about this webinar, and I've talked to folks in multiple industries. Everybody's going through this, and that's consistent with what Dan shared earlier. This is a macroeconomic issue, but our industry has a little bit of a special a situation here. And I shared this with Steve in emails yesterday. I will use examples from my career in the printing industry, and I'll share we did this, and I was working for a printing company or leading a printing company. Multiple times I've had students say, "What is a printing company?" So I think it's important for us to, and Steve is going to talk about this, and I love what he's doing and some of the thoughts he'll share related to helping raise our industry in the acknowledgement of it, or the recognition of it. I'm sorry.
Okay, now we're going to talk about what y'all reported were some of your decision tools you use when hiring people. You can see the top one overall is interviewing the candidate. Most everybody does that. job knowledge interview that came in second. That's really good, right? Because you want to make sure that the interview is not just an unstructured interview that is getting at somebody's personality, but you want to know what they actually know about that. Very few people are using any of these tests down here at the bottom. You can see 4.57 for job interviews. That's really high, but then 1.73, 1.86 for these different ability tests and personality tests. Personality tests like Myers-Briggs typology indicator, they're fairly inexpensive, and they could tell you how somebody's going to fit with a certain job. And so that's a good thing. Strengths finders and DISC, they also have a per person charge with that. The strengths finders runs around $20, but it tells you if you're hiring somebody for sales and their personality indicates that they wouldn't be a good fit for sales, then maybe it's maybe there's somebody better that you could hire, or maybe you need to give that person a little extra training. So that's all we were going to say about that.
Ben, can I add something here?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me reinforce this: making the right hiring decision. When you put the right person in the right place using the decision tools, you'll have better retention and less turnover. So this is related, making the right decision is great for the company and great for the individual to get them in the right place and let them and enhance the probability of their success.
And another thing, back to job requirements, when you're, some of y'all are using tests for job ability with a work sample. Again, make sure that some of these things aren't things that are going to be easily trained anyway. Can you take somebody off the street and show them how to operate a cutter folder, things like that.
So now I want to take a moment and just kind of go over some of the effective HR practices that are currently being implemented that you want to take a look at and see, are we doing these in our organization? And so we kind of broke it up. On the left, you can see you have the production employees, and on the right, you have the sales and admin employees. And if you'll notice, it's very similar at the top. You have on-the-job training as being the most effective HR practice you can put in place. And then on the left for production, along with that on-the-job training, you have other types of training: job rotation, formal training, performance appraisal. All those are kind of training-related areas that are important. And going back to when we talked about how are you motivating employees, first, thanks to all of you who posted in the Q&A section, that we're talking about having to hire new employees, but don't forget to put an emphasis on those employees that you currently have. Because those employees you have, it's a lot easier to keep them than it is to go find somebody new. And so as you're looking at those employees you currently have, you want to make sure you put them in a position that they can be successful. And that's why if you look at the left on the production employees, it makes sense then that training are the top 4. And so as we're looking at this, though, one of the things I wanted to point out is, as we start to look at the generational shift that's occurring with the younger workers coming in, if you look at the bottom, the last one as far as the most effective HR practice was a career development plan. I would want to pull your attention to that one specifically, because what we're seeing is that with a lot of these younger workers who are coming into the workforce, they no longer want to just punch a clock. They want to feel like what they're doing has meaning, has purpose. They're contributing to a cause. That there's something going on that's more important than hey, I'm just hitting a button in a machine or anything else. And also they want to find ways that they can improve. And so as you get these younger workers in, it's important that you kind of touch bases with them once you have them. You obviously provide them the training as is listed in those first top 4, but also sit down with them and try to find out about what their development plans are, or what what you can provide for them as far as developmental plans. Because like I said, it's easier to keep somebody than it is to find somebody new. And so sometimes to keep them motivated, all that's required is just give them something that they can aspire to. Give them a bar they can reach for. And a lot of these younger workers that are coming in, that's what they want, is they want to feel like they're actually contributing towards something.
Tim, a couple of things I wanted to mention related to this slide. The formal training and, the formal training, we did not do a good job of this. We did not. Indeed, in our second company, we were in that time period in the late 90s where CGX and other companies were buying printing companies. And someone invited us to go visit a company they had purchased, and it was one of our major competitors. And we went to that company, and when we walked out into their production facility, they had a classroom set up where they structured and taught employees and had formal training and career development, and that sort of thing. And they kicked our butt doing that. We didn't do it. I didn't do it. And it's so important to show an investment in employees by building those training programs. I think that's a real plus. A real positive for us was the corporate incentive plans. We, in all three companies, we gave a percentage of our profits back to our employees as a bonus. And we would make sure, even though our fiscal year end was December 31st, we wouldn't hand this out until February, maybe early March, because we wanted to separate it from Christmas. We made sure it was separate from a paycheck. It wasn't added to their paycheck. I went around and shook hands and handed those checks, and it resonated. And it was one of the great days of the year for me. But we did that. And then another thing we did is we would have meetings, short 15 minutes in between shifts, where we would pull shifts together. We'd bring donuts or cookies or something and tell them what our goals and what we were doing and that sort of thing. And I think because of our corporate incentive plans, where we tied it to form performance, I think that caused the employees to connect better with what we were trying to do.
So a few concluding thoughts as far as just talking in general about what's happening in the workforce is that right now it's very, very important that we, each and every one of us, look at our industries, not even our industry, look at our organizations. Who are the employees we have working for us? What is being effective? What's being ineffective? What has worked for us 5 years ago might not be working for us now as far as how we're looking at recruiting new employees. And so we need to start getting our teams together and strategically really considering what HR practices are working and what aren't. And if they aren't working, it's time to try something new. If it is working, keep going with it. And so as you're doing this, try to develop a plan, but that plan needs to be one that is not just set in stone. We put it and it's there for 5 years, we forget about it. It's got to be a plan that's consistently being updated and changed, because again, this isn't just a printing industry. This is a macro issue where you're now competing with a lot of different organizations for those same workers. And so as you're doing this, you want to start to be aware of what are the generational differences in motivation. If I'm looking to recruit, somebody who's 60 versus somebody who's coming in at 21, it's going to be a little bit different as far as what I do to recruit them. And so what I have to do is I have to make sure that I'm doing things like, especially with my younger workers, giving them some feedback, some positive reinforcement. You're going to find that for a lot of these young workers, sometimes what they just want to hear is, hey, George, thank you for coming in today and putting forth your best effort. You're really contributing to the benefit of our organization. I recognize that, and I appreciate what you're doing. Don't overlook the power of positive reinforcement, especially to these younger workers. If they're having issues where they're not performing up to where they need to be, let them know that too. Don't be afraid to sit down, but just do it in a way that you're not going to basically damage them. Because everybody in here, we all liked it when we went to school and that teacher in kindergarten put that gold star or whatever it was on our piece of paper. you have to remember a lot of these younger workers, they're still coming out of that mentality where they've been working hard for grades, or they've been going through and they like that positive reinforcement. Don't forget to give it to them. And so as you're looking at that, try to just look and think, what else can I do? How else can I reward and recognize these employees? What can I do to show them they have value? And some of you said that you're doing that when we looked at the Q&A earlier about how you're motivating your employees. Like some of you said, you know, we're having picnics, we're doing little things like that. You know, that goes a long way to people feeling that they're a part of your organization, to feeling included. And that's big for this younger generation, is that they want to feel included. You know, obviously, we're going to pass it off to Steve here in a little bit. He's going to get into some things we have to do to make sure we get that message out to these younger workers that, hey, we are a viable option for you. We are not this old, what you picture as a printing company, as Ralph mentioned too as well, where we don't know what you do. We have to put that message out to them so they see what we're doing, and they're like, hey, that is a potential career opportunity for me, not just a job, but a career opportunity.
Can I add some, Tim? Or
Yeah.
I haven't shared this with Dan or Tim, but last night I was grading papers in a management class. It's a very fast, 5 weeks for a whole semester. And they shared thoughts in this assignment last night that were interesting and may relate. One said, related to this workforce shortage in the demographic area and that sort of thing, be transparent with your leadership team and share your plan. Have a plan and share your plan with your management team and maybe even the entire employment group team. I thought that was interesting. I like this one. Focus on making your company a desirable, underline desirable place to work. And Tim mentioned things related to motivation. We've had some motivation discussion in here. It was interesting that a couple of weeks ago, I was in Florida and did a presentation at the PIS convention on motivation. Tim and Dad, this may interest you, but I actually put theory, motivation theory, in my slides, and it resonated so much that I've had multiple printing company leaders say, send me those slides. I want to share it with the management team. But learning how to motivate, thinking proactively on how to motivate. This is a simple thing that I did, but it just resonated. I would praise in public, reprimand in private. And it seemed to resonate. All right, now related to the workforce issues and the demographics, Dan, this came out of this assignment that you built for this class. Our workforce, our country is becoming much more diverse. And so you may, in trying to make a workplace desirable, you may seek to educate your managers on points related to leading diversity, leading diverse workplace, how you deal with different cultures and things like that. You might consider having someone from a local college come in and speak and have a lunch with your managers to talk about that. Another thing that came out of this assignment last night was, it was interesting, as you're trying to fill positions, again, we're becoming much more diverse. You might target areas, specific areas, diverse areas, minority groups, and go to those groups, maybe do career fairs there and try to draw some of those folks in. So just some ideas. So Dan, Tim, you have any comments related to what I just said?
No, sounds good.
Well said.
Okay. Some other thoughts on hiring, structured versus unstructured interview. As we said, so research has shown that the unstructured interview is the most popular across all industries, and it's basically just kind of a get to know you interview, and you may not keep it job focused. You may go off on certain tangents. You're trying to figure out whether somebody fits well with an organization or somebody has a good personality. The unstructured interview is one of the least valid predictors of job performance. Why is that? Okay, because there are some positions, and even at your organization, if you're hiring a graphic designer, what kind of a personality do you want that person to have? You know, I don't care if the graphic designer is good at talking to people, right? I want them to do their job. You know, I don't want them flitting around the office talking to everybody else. And I want them to sit down and do their stuff. And that person that's going to be sitting down doing their stuff, they're going to be a little bit more introverted. They're going to be a little bit less easy on job interviews. And maybe you've all seen this. And so they're going to work better by using a structured interview where you're just keeping it job relevant, and you could compare one applicant to another applicant, job relevant. Okay, do you know how to use this program? Do you know how to use this design program? You know, what are some samples of your work, et cetera, right? That's going to work a lot better than trying to pick the person with the most bubbly personality.
May I inject? Dan?
Yeah.
We evolved from this unstructured to structured process. And I'll give you one story that really worked well. We were working for a customer service representative, and we pulled our customer service team together and said, what are the things that we are looking for in this new person? Then we developed questions, just like Dana's saying, questions we would ask each of the three interviewees. And I asked the questions, and we had someone else from our customer service team sit in and take notes and listen. And we asked those same specific questions. Then we as a team came together and talked about what those answers were, and were unanimous on what decision to make. If we had not, in that situation, used this structured approach, we would have made the wrong decision. No doubt about it. We would have made the wrong decision. Go ahead, Dan. I wanted to share that.
Yeah. Next thing is do wage surveys. Wages, as you know, wages have increased a lot during the last 2 years. And so I understand that upcoming, you're going to be doing a wage survey within your industry, but also look at your competing industries. Anybody that competes for the same labor pool that you are in your area, that's going to be a competitor for you, and that's who you're going to need to look at. I sat on a board of a not-for-profit preschool program, and we recently lost one of our preschool teachers. And you know, I said, what preschool did they go to? They were such a good teacher. What preschool did they go to? Oh, they went to Wendy's. They went to Wendy's. Wendy's was hiring for $16 an hour. So don't think that you're not competing with the Wendy's down the street or the McDonald's that's $15 an hour. We have Amazon here, and you probably do too, and they're starting at $16, $17 an hour. Again, it's not the most pleasant work environment based on what we've heard from all the Amazon employees, but it's good money. So are you giving your employees that little extra to make up for maybe a little less that you're paying them, or can you pay them be at a competitive wage with the external environment? Also, it doesn't hurt to ask your employees that are no longer there, where do they go and why, right? You want to make sure that you're leaving that employee with a good taste of your organization. If you have a whole bunch of employees that are quitting because of a toxic supervisor, then you need to know that, right? If you have a bunch of employees quitting because they're going down the road to another organization for 50 cents more per hour, you need to know that too. Would you have given that employee that is already trained, already knows how to do their job? Would you give them 50 cents more an hour? Probably, right? As Tim was saying, it's better to have a good employee that has that tacit knowledge and knows exactly how to do their job, then to start at square one all over again. Turnover costs money. You have to have extra time with recruiting. You have to have extra time with training. And then those new employees don't always fit, right? So then you have extra turnover. Turnover creates turnover, right? So it doesn't hurt to ask those former employees where they went and why. And again, look at your reviews on Google, look at your reviews on Glassdoor, and they will post on there why they left the company. And it's anonymous, so they don't really care what they're saying. And then back to Ralph here.
We added this slide this morning. This is from one of our printing industry performance and insight studies, the PIPA studies. And you'll see that this is the number of employees per $1 million in revenue. And you can, Dan, if you put your slide, you can see the first one is 1 million and below. They typically average about 8 employees per $1 million. But you can see as companies get larger, the number of employees per $1 million goes down. It's a more efficient use of employees. So this, yes, we're having trouble filling positions. The point I want to make here is think about efficiently using your employees and try to maybe reduce the need just a little bit. And we're seeing growth among association members. So I think this is something to be aware of. Proactively look to get more out of your team. You might seek ideas from the entire team of how you can move employees around. A couple of ideas came to mind. One is cross training in production. Do you have press helpers or press operators that could also run a cutting machine? That sort of thing. And I've seen this applied in customer service, and this is not a fit for every company. But a couple of companies I've run into recently, typically we had a customer service person connected to a specific sales team and had specific accounts. A couple of companies that I've interacted with, they are using their customer service team as a team. Whatever question comes in from any customer, the one who's available jumps on it. Again, I don't know that works for everybody. It's just an idea how to proactively see if you can use your people more efficiently. Here's a couple of other quotes from my October study. I take better care of the people I have, not wanting to lose anyone. The second quote, the number of applicants has reduced significantly, but due to our hiring practices outside the norm for our industry, we have a good team members and continue our growth. This is not going away, and this is macro, these workforce shortage issues. But strategically, you can address these problems, and by addressing them, you can make them better. It's an opportunity to be better, to get better. Let me hand it over to Steve.
Thank you, Ralph. That was a lot of good information, and I just have a few minutes. I think it's really important because I think Tim touched on it quite a bit about the need for planning, and I think it's helpful to stand back a little bit and try to define what that means, because I think people have been doing sales planning for a long time, and they do that because without effective sales planning, you know that you're not going to have a chance to grow or even sustain revenue. And so everyone is on board. They understand the time and effort that it takes to actually develop those sales plans. I think we're getting to the point right now where we're going to need to put that same level of effort to maintain our employees, because if we don't have the requisite employees, we're already seeing that impact on our sales. So when you look back at what workforce development means, if that's what we're going to be tackling, the basics of it, there's a lot of functions of workforce development, but you can put it into 3 categories: to recruit, to train, and to retain. And so when you look at that, we all do those things, right? We've talked about over the last 45 minutes all the things that people are doing within those realms, but we have a tendency, I think, to do them quite ad hoc. We all recruit employees in a variety of ways. There's some level of on-the-job training, and there's some level of performance reviews. There's salary enhancements, and there's some level of events we might hold. We talked about picnics and other things, employee retention strategies. But from an ad hoc perspective, I don't think that's going to get us where we want to go. So, we're developing a pilot program here in the Midwest, and where we're addressing this in a maybe more cohesive way. But whether you don't have to be part of our pilot program to be developing your own workforce development plan. We take those three terms and put it into three buckets, and those buckets are advocacy. And advocacy is meaning to how do we inspire career seekers to join our company? And then it's careers. So how are we actually fostering candidate pipelines into our organization, and then guiding print careers? And then learning. How are we building a learning culture? So we're actually making sure that our employees are coming in the door. Number one, they have the requisite skills at that point, and whatever they do and who they are, that we've actually got them with a systemic plan throughout the organization that's really tailored to their interests and their needs. So, when you look at advocacy, let me just take a couple minutes in each one of these categories, just at a high level. Advocacy is, well, how do we inspire? As Ralph said, he goes and talks to people and students, and they're starting from square one. They don't even know what printing is. So, we've got to remove the barriers to people understanding who and what we are. So when people are out there throwing up their Indeed job posting, I think you have to understand right off the bat what you're up against is that it's really not about them understanding what your press operator position is when they don't even understand what industry you're in. So I think that's a job that's part of our plan. When we build that advocacy plan, it's not about designing what my ad is going to look like and what my language is. I need to stand back and make sure that, number one, I'm articulating what the industry is all about. And number two, then I'm articulating my role within that industry. We are an exciting industry. We have amazing technology producing such cool stuff, but that does seem to get lost in our messaging. And so we need to own that. We have a program called Print is Everywhere, where the companies that we want to be working with to building those plans, we want to put tools in their hands so they can to help them tell that story. So, the next part of it that I like to talk about on advocacy is, who are we talking with? So Ralph said referral, number one way that we gain new employees. I think that's very common, but what does it indicate? It means the same communities are being reached over and over again. We're not developing new pipelines. And so one of the ways that we're working with our companies is to expand our hiring practices beyond just referral, because we know that's working. You should take advantage of it. But there are other strategies specifically related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're reaching out to new communities that we have a lot of connection with, and certainly don't know maybe a lot about us. And that's really within your plan, looking at your hiring practices from that filter. What communities are we reaching, and how can we do a better job of reaching outside of it? And one of the key ways to do that is your partners. So, when you go in and work with a company to develop a plan, we walk in the door with their regional possibility for partnership. So who are the schools in your area? Who are the high schools? Not only what are the names of those schools, but who are the business liaisons within that school? As Tim was mentioning yesterday, who are the CTEs, the technical educators who want to make sure that they are partnering with business and they can tell that student what the industry is all about, what are those jobs, because we want to support the high schools, the colleges, the trade schools, the workforce centers. They're all out there advocating for people in the community to get jobs. We want to be their partner. And so we need to explain to them who our industry is about, what our company is about, and then actually connect them with our print service providers. And so there's a lot of advocacy I think is going to be needed for us to be successful. You know, when you get down to it, then there's careers, and it's a lot of career guidance. One of the things I like to say around that is that we talk about jobs, but we talk about it from our perspective. We don't talk about it from the potential employee's perspective. So we talk to a student, do you like to work with your hands? Maybe you're not afraid of a little math. Well, you know what? You might connect with our finishing department. Or you like machinery, you have a great attention to detail. Well, you know what? That actually might connect with press operators, what we do. You know, we're just thinking about it from the terms of how do we communicate with people and connect it back to our industry. So, you know, we talked about, you know, career events and job tours. It's really working with those workforce partners and connecting them into our operations from a more relationship building perspective. You know, when we do sales, we don't all go out and advertise on TV, because that's not effective. Your salespeople are out there generating relationships. It's the same thing as we build our workforce. We need to develop those relationships. And then there's a lot of training. I won't go into the details because we're at 12:31, but there's a lot of training that support we need to be offering our companies. And it needs to be experiential. We need to be thinking about how people learn. And so it's important that we take that on, and that we offer training classes that aren't putting someone in front of a computer, because that's just not how people take in information. So we need a comprehensive strategy to provide experiential learning to our employees, and make sure that they're guided right from the start, which is a course that we're developing, which is the Introduction to Graphic Communications. But then we need advanced discipline training down the line with a sophisticated learning management system that we're all able to kind of latch into. So I'm going to be talking a lot about more of this at the America's Print Show, and I'll give you a lot more details, a lot more meat on those bones. But I'm hoping people take out of this that we have a great need. That's clear. We need to stand back, and yes, we need to continue to keep the engines rolling. We also need to spend time and energy and build that comprehensive plan within these three categories to make sure we're attacking and advocating for our companies. We're addressing strategically our career paths. And then we've got a plan of how to train people ongoing. Ralph or Patrick?
Because quickly, first, Steve, this is going to scare you, but I agree with everything you said. So I'm scared. Okay,
Right, well,
a lot of what we provided today was from our printing industry and insights, performance and insight studies. Thank you if you're participating. We're not doing a July study. The wage benefits, sales compensation, those were surveys that were out. So we didn't want to bring members too many surveys. Also, what we were going to do in October, July, was to start to build financial ratios, financial benchmarks. And we'll start that in January. And we're thinking it's better to do that with year-end data. So I'm very excited about January. Using financial benchmarks was a huge strategic tool in our businesses. And so we're going to start building those in January. Potential topics for October, and it's still a work in process. How inflation is affecting our industry, and how paper shortages are affecting inventory and cash reserves. We have some other topics we're wrestling with. My great thanks to my colleagues, Dan Morrell and Tim Moake. They really have helped contribute a lot to these studies and to this today. Thank you, Steve and Patrick and Chris for putting us together, and Jacob for your sponsoring.
Great. Patrick, any final words from you?
Great thanks to our speakers for this outstanding overview of the subject. A number of you have asked about obtaining the slides. You can get the slides from Dr. Williams if you will just inquire at the email address for him that you see there. I also see that most of the questions that came in today were fielded by our speakers individually. We have one here that I think we can get to briefly. Dan, I see that you're typing an answer. Maybe you'd prefer to give it live. How much impact do remote jobs have on the printing industry, in your opinion? I feel this is difficult to compete with, especially among younger employees.
Okay, yeah, basically, I was typing a rambling answer here, but I said, true, this is an issue among all industries. And yeah, we are seeing that since the pandemic, there is a much greater demand for flexible employment and the ability to work remotely. So you need to think about what jobs you have and what positions you're filling. And if there is the ability to work from home, can a graphic designer or a salesperson work out of their home office instead of coming to work every day? But also at the same time, it's kind of a balance, because at the same time, you have people that need to be in the production facility all the time, working the machines. And so what is the added benefit for those people? So internal equity is, are you treating your employees fair at your organization when compared to one another? Because employee A, you're going to let them stay home and work from home, but employee B has to come in and work the production line. What is the added incentive for employee B? So it is a difficult time, and it's a difficult question. And if anybody else has any insight specifically on that, I'd welcome it.
This is, and Dan and Tim, if you'll reject this or support it, either one. What I'm seeing in a little bit of research is that we automatically assume that working from home is great for everyone. However, there are folks who are extroverted, need that contact, and working at home is better for them. So I think that's something to consider. Dan or Tim, are y'all nodding with that or shaking your head against me?
Yeah, I would say that even though there is a transition over to where a lot of jobs are going remote, there are still workers who thrive by going into work. And so don't automatically assume that everybody wants to work from home, because not everybody does want to work from home. And even some who do think they want to work from home, once they start working from home, they're like, maybe this isn't for me. And so like Dan said, this isn't something that's going away. But one of the things you want to consider is, can you offer things such as flexible hours or anything like that, where, hey, I know we're in the middle of doing something, maybe on Tuesdays you work, I don't know. You have to just kind of look at your specific organization and think, are there ways that we can kind of provide that a little more internal equity, as Dan mentioned, where, hey, we can do shifts or shorter shifts, give longer breaks here. We can do different things. What can we offer? And maybe for those coming into the workplace, can we offer them things that they're missing out on? For example, I worked for an organization that while we were there, we had a local, so while we were in the office, we had a local car wash company basically come up and they could wash anyone's cars who wanted it. So it was kind of a win-win for the organization. And so if we can't have them where they can work from home and do all these things, can we bring some of those things into the office, just small little things, to where they're feeling like, okay, now when I'm off of work, I don't have to go do everything that was on my list. A couple of those things, maybe I can knock those out. Hey, while I'm working, my car's out getting washed. Are there little things we can offer or do to try to make the workplace a little bit more to fit that work-life balance?
Also, another thing that's happening is as people have returned to work, companies are rethinking, do we need this person 5 days a week, 9 to 5? Or can we give them a flexible schedule where we could have them work 4 days on, 3 days off? So those 4 days on, they're going to be 10-hour days or 10.5-hour days, give them a half hour for lunch. Can we restructure our jobs like that? Can we make it so that our heaviest production days are going to be Monday through Thursday? So a lot of companies that you're competing for the same workers are giving people that flexibility, or they're giving people the ability to, as Tim said, maybe share a job with somebody else. Maybe instead of one full-time employee, you could have 2 part-time employees, or maybe you could have a flexible work schedule where you could say, okay, we need to have everybody in the office between noon and 5 p.m. So if you want to work from 9 to 5, or if you want to work from noon to 8 p.m., pick your 8 hours, around here, congestion is a problem, traffic congestion. And so if somebody was able to pick flexible hours, I've got a neighbor down the street that he'll go in the office at 6 a.m. just to avoid the rush hour. He's an early morning person, so he enjoys that. I would not enjoy that. But he gets to take off work early every day and pick his kids up from school. So especially with millennials and Gen Zs, it's not about living to work anymore. It's about working to live. And we hear this consistently, is that I want to earn enough money to be able to do what I want to do on the weekends, but I want to have the weekends to be able to do that stuff, right? Heavily influenced by Instagram, other social media, where they see lifestyles of the people that they graduated high school with, and they say, but they only see the highlights, the best things, and they say, I want to have a part of that lifestyle. And if I'm working in this in this job for 5 or 6 days a week, when do I get to have that lifestyle?
One more very quick thing. We're getting a lot of messages about slides, wanting copies of our slides. My email is ralph.williams@mtsu.edu. If you go to
Ralph, I just want to say we'll be sending the slides out to everyone who registered.
I'm sorry, sir.
That's okay, not a problem. But if you want to type your email in to the chat so people have that, that's great.
Okay.
It's also right on the screen as well.
Okay, there it is.
There it is.
And I see Karen said that they offered a gas subsidy. That's really genius, because gas subsidy, instead of it's something that you could help somebody with the increased cost of gas, and it could be something that's like a temporary bump in their wages. The fear that we have with giving somebody a permanent boost in their wages is that there may be a downturn, and it may be next year, right? So if we all of a sudden boost everybody up to a minimum $15 an hour, when that downturn comes, might be some layoffs in store, and there's no way, once you give a raise, there's no way of really getting that back. But if you give a temporary gas subsidy, that's an excellent way of doing that.
I see we have one final question, and in view of the time, maybe this should be the final question. How crucial is it to go through a website social media revamp to attract young talent?
I'll definitely ask, find somebody within your organization that's in that generational group and say, hey, take a minute and look at my website versus other websites, or look at our social media presence versus others. How do we compare? It could be that you're doing just fine, right? But if you just have the same static website that you've had for 5+ years, then you're probably due. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, and then I would add on to that. It's also not just that you have the revamp, it's that, are you updating the content? And especially if you're going to have social media, like somebody mentioned, they're having a hard time with younger workers always using their phone or always wanting to be on their phone. Well, from a social media standpoint, are you okay with them, at 15 minutes a day, snapping some selfies of them in front of a cool printing machine and then posting that to your company's social media? I mean, we have to start being a little bit more creative. I mean, we have these younger individuals who are growing up with this technology. Why don't we start taking advantage of it to help us benefit our organizations rather than saying, put your phone away forever, don't use your phone. Instead, we say, hey, why don't you go snap a photo of that and send it out to all your friends to let them know about what we're doing that's cool here. Again, you have to have the policies, as Dan mentioned, where you can't be on your phone all the time, obviously, because work won't be done. But hey, maybe if they have an interest in social media, hey, can you take a photo of this? Or why don't you snap a photo of that? Hey, that message you just sent, can you post that to our social media and tag us in that? Just do little things to kind of help get your message out there. Because again, you do not want to have that we are a stale old business to these younger workers. They want to see that you're innovative, that you're doing things. And as Steve mentioned, as we're trying to rebrand the industry, part of that rebranding can be done by our current workers who are big into social media. Because why? They're going to take the photos anyway. Why don't we use them? Put them on our social media, capitalize on these younger workers.
Yeah, especially if you have some employees that do have kind of larger followings on the regional social media. It's amazing that you don't know necessarily who has like a side gig where they're doing social media stuff. One of my former students, back when I had him in class, he says, I said, well, what are your career plans? He says, oh, I'm going to be a professional YouTuber. Like, oh, okay. Well, now he's a professional YouTuber. He's making 80 to 100 grand a year doing YouTube. Again, that's not everybody's going to be able to do that, but he found his niche, and his niche was he was an excellent videographer and excellent at doing all these After Effects and everything. But to run into him on the street or to have him work for our company, you would not know that he's got this incredible following, right? So if you have somebody who's not on TikTok, don't introduce them to TikTok. That would be a nightmare. But if you have somebody that's already on TikTok, they have a decent following, then have them shoot a few TikToks and improve them before they send them out, of how fun it is to work at your organization.
Great. Well, Patrick, you want to wind us up?
Yes, Steve, I think that's going to bring us to the conclusion of today's program. I want to thank everyone in our audience for your participation, particularly those great questions. We hope that you'll join us for more Printing Industry Midwest webinars and events in the future. Thanks again for attending this one, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.